And now on Who's Views, it's time for the latest headlines with JT and the Whotastic panel.
Hello and welcome back to Who's Views and Headlines. And have you heard? There's a new bandwagon in town and the usual suspects have all clamoured aboard it. But are they actually singing the right tune? To talk about the latest headline with me this evening is Paul and Third Doctor Ian. Hi guys, thank you for joining me.
Hello. Nice to be back.
Yeah. Yes. As we always say on this show, whenever they give us a headline, we're going to talk about it. And that's exactly what's happened, because yesterday there was some news that developed from, well, it's a couple of days ago now, but it all sort of started to take shape yesterday. And yes, we are talking about show business and especially Russell T. Davies and his latest Instagram posts. So hello to everybody that's watching us in the chat. Nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us. And thank you all as well to Kirsty, who's in the chat, and Garbage, if he's in the chat as well. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for being there. So we're going to get straight into this, everybody. We do want your views. We do want your comments as we go through all this as well. Now, this, of course, is actually, it's come from a very sensitive subject, let's put it that way. So we're not going to focus on that element. We're going to talk about the aftermath and what has happened specifically in the United Kingdom government. Yes, in the House of Commons 2 days ago. 2 days ago, on Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2024, at Prime Minister's Question Time, aren't we, guys? So that's where we're heading to now. Prime Minister's Question Time. Now, for those of you outside the United Kingdom, you need to understand, firstly, that these debates in the House of Commons, especially Prime Minister's Question Times, have seemed to turn into some great big joke when it comes to our MPs from all parties. They love it. They absolutely love hurling abuse at each other. Is it in my imagination, gentlemen?
Not at all. Since it was televised, they've gone over the top. It's like pantomime season all the time, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. It can be really ridiculous. And they're always getting at each other and bringing each other down. It's done with British tongue in cheek to a lot of the extent. But this particular Prime Minister's Question Time was no exception. Now, as the saddo I am, I was watching this live. Yeah, I was watching it live and absolutely thinking to myself, here we go with all this usual banter, if you like, this usual showbiz type performance from a load of MPs that's supposed to be doing a job. On all political spectrums. They're all as bad as each other when they get into the House. I was also watching because I thought at some particular moment in this particular Prime Minister's Question Time, a certain political party was going to take advantage of a terrible situation that's happened in the UK over the last few weeks. And by God, they did. So let's start, shall we, everybody, right from the very beginning. So Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was, of course, having an exchange with the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, who is the leader of the opposition, which is the Labour Party here in the UK at this moment in time. Now, like it or not, Keir Starmer bets on that he's going to be our next Prime Minister. It's a long time in politics, of course, but you never know. There you go. But they were having this exchange, and I don't know where this has all come from. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to read you the content from the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, that has been the source of what has happened immediately after and yesterday and today, especially on social media platforms and on many shows. And it was this. Now, this is from the official report of all the parliamentary debates, which is called the Hansard. The Prime Minister said, "We are bringing down waiting lists for the longest waiters and making progress." So bear in mind, this is in context. "It is a bit rich to hear about promises from someone who has broken every single promise he was elected on." So there he's talking about the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer. "I have counted almost 30 in the last year. Pensions, planning, peerages, public sector pay, tuition fees, childcare, second referendums, defining a woman. Although, in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn. The list goes on, but the theme is the same. Empty words, broken promises, and absolutely no plan." Keir Starmer takes to the floor at this stage and then says, you can read that for yourself there, he retaliates, and that's where it all kicked off afterwards. Because Mr. Sunak, of course, has now been, by all and sundry, it seems, accused of transphobia. Why? I don't understand, gentlemen, why when it comes to that. But that's what he has been accused of. He has been told he should apologise from extreme left-wing ideologists. And then yesterday, to give you more of the story, there were calls for Mr. Sunak to apologise, which he has bluntly refused to do, because I don't know about you guys, won't speak for you two, but I don't think he's got anything to apologise there for that particular speech.
I don't think so either, not at all, no.
Right, so we've got that. But one of the elements, or one of the media elements that came out to say you should apologise was Attitude magazine here in the UK. Now, Attitude magazine, to put you in the picture, was a gay lifestyle magazine, very glossy, and it was aimed originally at same-sex attracted men, gay men, homosexual men. I've bought copies of it back in the turn of the century in the 90s myself occasionally, because it would feature pop culture, and it would feature fashion, and it would feature, big stars of the time, all that sort of stuff, really. In recent years, though, of course, it has become more TQI involved. So there you go. Make of that as you will. But they put out a demand, if you like. Now, this was taken from Russell T. Davis's Instagram. But this was the post from the Attitude magazine. I'm not going to read that all out because you can imagine what it actually says. But it does say at the last paragraph there, you, Mr. Sunak, and this is an open letter to the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, you owe trans people and the wider LGBTQ plus community an apology. We are waiting. And can you guess what happened from that, everybody? Well, yeah, it was going to happen, wasn't it, guys? It was going to happen. You know who responded, and he responded it with this. Excellent words from Attitude magazine. We are governed by bastards who incite, and I am not going to say that word because I've been advised not to, but I'm going to call it the M word. The M word for those listening to the show at the moment. We are governed by bastards who incite the M word.
Now, I have to say, he must. That was Instagram. You said that was. If the rules apply for that kind of language online, surely he should be banned from being online on Instagram. Is that not the case?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think as well. If I may, JT, before we go any further, I think for the benefit of anybody that's not in the UK, like you've already touched on, the Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister. He is from a party that they call the Tories. That is the same as the Conservative Party, and they are the equivalent of America's Republican Party in a sense. They're on that side of the spectrum, whereas the Labour Party are quite a way to the Democrat way, which is on the left side of the spectrum. So that's how they kind of equate. Personally, I really are a fan of Sunak, and I just look at Starmer with contempt. But to put this in context, Starmer does have a habit of, he is known as Captain Hindsight. He always seems to know things after the event, and he is also known for flip-flopping. So whatever he says, he'll make policy decisions and get huge fanfare. A bit like when a newspaper libels somebody, they do it in big letters on the headlines, and then when they're forced to do an apology, it's in tiny print on page 17. He gets the big headlines for the announcements, and then he does very quiet retractions. And yesterday they had a huge flagship program of when they get into power, they will spend 28 billion a year on green projects. So 28 billion is about $35 billion a year on green projects. And yesterday that was quietly ditched. Their flagship,
conveniently as well, Ian. Convenient.
So that is the context behind what Sunak was saying. You give promises and then you take them away. And the 99% thing was because when it was a big thing in British politics about 5-6 months ago, can you define what a woman is? And in fairness, Rishi Sunak said, a biological one who has a vagina, basically.
Yes.
You know, which is totally bloody true. And a male, you got a penis. You know, one has XY, one has XX. End of. That's it. Starmer was 99% of women don't have a penis. It's just like, you're a penis. You know, it could not. So that's where the 99% came from, and that's what Sunak was referring to. If we're putting in context, next election, I ain't voting for either, and I ain't a fan of either. But in context, for fairness and balance, that's where it's all come from, and that's what he was referring to, the 99%. But he never, at any time, said anything that began with the trans word. And yet it's been picked up. It's almost like they were waiting to be offended. And when they didn't get fed the line, they triggered it anyway. And they're hoping that most people that haven't heard it or listened to it or paid attention or taken the time to look it up or watch it will just believe what they're saying and be also sympathetically outraged. And to be fair, their plan is working, because there are people being sympathetically outraged. But he never said anything, in my opinion, that warrants... I don't see the connection between what they're getting outraged about and what he said.
Well, we can have a look at that again, because this is from that is there on your screens now. That is from the Hansard, the official report of all parliamentary debates. It is available to you to access. It's all there. Now, something I just want to put to bed straight away. No offense to anybody that's watching in the chat. Hello to you all. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, all the usual stuff. But a certain person was not in the gallery at that point, as stated by Keir Starmer. It's now been shown categorically that a certain person, and out of respect, we're not mentioning them at all because they've been through enough, and we must respect that terrible matter, but they were not there. They were not there in the gallery at all. So to say something like that from the leader of the opposition, I find to be more irresponsible, really, because, as you're saying, Gian, the banter that was coming from Sunak there was in context.
Yeah.
And there it is again. What I've been trying to say this to people today. What about this has upset them? What has upset them on this? Where is there anything phobic? Where was there anything phobic? You know, it's just, what was the saying the other night? When we came off air the other night, I said to these two, I think we're going to be back very soon, because I've got the feeling a certain somebody is going to say something about something that happened in the House of Commons today. I'm a mind reader, gents. I'm a mind reader, because he really did. But to bring that out, to do it now, I just want to state here as well. That to me is also not just hypocritical, but highly inappropriate and highly insensitive, because he's saying that the UK government are the M word. But what happened to the person that he's most interested in, that poor kid? That whole instant there. I mean, look at that. He's used that same word blatantly. I'm absolutely disgusted at that. Now, I have to point out, Paul, that Russell T. Davies has 285,000 followers on Instagram. How many of them are children who are Doctor Who fans? And how many is he influencing with this? I find this completely irresponsible. What about you?
Well, I agree. I think the whole thing is hypocritical, and I think the Prime Minister didn't say anything that was inappropriate. He was challenging the opposition. That's not what it's about. But RTD is a position, like the Prime Minister, in a position of power, and he shouldn't be being so flippant with what he puts in his tweets or his Instagram messages, because they're not appropriate. And like you're saying, these are influencing young minds, which is awful.
Well, we've spoken about this before, haven't we, Who Viewers, here on Headlines and on Who Views as well, when we've been reviewing. I mean, these people in show business, especially connected to Doctor Who, seem to have lost the ability to understand that they are role models, whether they are in front of the camera or behind. That's all gone out of the window. They don't seem to care now, because they're important. Their voice is important. What they have to say. And I just wonder, what do you think, guys? Because we've had an incident on the top of this. Let's get to this as well. Thank you, everybody that's in the chat. Really, really is great to see you. I am seeing your comments. Obviously, we're just looking about this so that you are aware of what we're talking about tonight. But this is the comment again from Russell T. Davies on his Instagram. And then on the back of that, somebody else waded in, and this will be Carol Vorderman. Now, if you're outside the UK or if you've never heard of Carol Vorderman, doesn't matter. She's totally irrelevant. Does not matter who she is. Doesn't matter. Because she's not that important, really. She may think she is, but she's not. She was a radio presenter for the BBC. Now, in December 2023, she left her radio because she was commenting about the current UK government on her social media. And there were comments about this. And some people say she was fired. She says she was, doesn't she, Paul? She said she left the BBC because they were saying that she couldn't do such a thing or whatever. But what is it with these people that work for the BBC? Lineker, Vorderman, although she wasn't there before, Russell T Davies. Don't they understand that democracy is around here? It just seems to me that they've all joined this very badly informed bandwagon, and they're all screaming phobia now. Phobia, phobia, phobia. And not one of them has gone back in, because look what Carol Vorderman said in response to Russell T Davies on Instagram. This government is the very worst of us. To which Russell T Davies replies, they are so dangerous. In what way? Carol Vorderman said, we have to do our very best to get them gone for good, Russell. I need to speak to you about plans. Absolutely, Russell replies.
Oh, God, there's going to be an episode of Doctor Who about maths. God help us.
But am I the only one that gets shivers from that? We must actually come together and get some plans together to get rid of a government. Guy Fawkes, anyone? I mean, come on.
I was literally just thinking that in James I. It's quite insidious. I mean, one of the biggest accusations against the BBC is that it is politically biased and heavily left. And the BBC will argue against that. They will rail against that. They will defend themselves till the cows come home, as is their right. However, if we agreed with them, we would all be wrong, because they are incredibly weighted towards the left. You listen to any of their political panel shows with an audience, you have anybody from one side comes in and it's boos and catcalls, and the rest is just like Keir Starmer could be on there and say, I think everybody should murder their grandma. And they would, sorry, I used the M word, I do apologize, allegedly, and would get applause for it, literally. And it's that insane. But then no matter how much the BBC denies it, you have BBC employees like this. Now, I know Vorderman said that she left and everything else, but then she did post a tweet from a video from her car where she was crying as she'd left for the last time. And it was very much, she hadn't left of her own free will. You could tell, why cry if it's your choice? But yeah, the BBC employs these people and does not censure these people. But I do feel if they were politically leaning the other way in an organization that doesn't, they wouldn't be employed for very long. Whereas you look at Lineker, he's Teflon. Nothing sticks to him. He can say what he likes, and they can comment, oh, maybe it's not appropriate, we'll have a word with him. He's still there, and he's still saying stuff. So's she, so's he. And in many ways, Russell T Davies is worse, because he has this position of, like you said, power, authority, and influence over very young minds. And they will believe him because they trust him. And he is abusing that trust. In a sense, I would say, allegedly, it's almost predatory, really. I think that's what I would say it was, predatory on young minds.
I mean, I'm absolutely disgusted by this. And I think it's very, very unfortunate that they haven't gone back. What happened to actually research now? Because I guarantee you, none of them were watching Prime Minister's Question Times. They would have all been working, or they would have been dozing off, or whatever these people in show business do. And then they've heard the hearsay, haven't they? And that's what seems to happen all the time. Oh, there's the bandwagon. Oh, my God, it goes against what I believe, because I'm too busy trying to be seen to be virtuous and a very nice person and being on the right side of history and all this nonsense. And so they've clambered on it. But yet all you have to do is go and look at that Hansard before you start throwing accusations, which is always published the day after the events in Parliament on everything. And you can go and read it for yourself, like I did there, and which I've brought to you here on Headlines, on Who's Views. And none of them did that. They've just jumped on the bandwagon. And I find it horrendous that all these people are doing that. We've also heard that allegedly Georgia Tennant, of course, has also joined this bandwagon, amongst many other show business people and many other activists as well. But I just find, Tony's actually saying it here, there's going to be a lot of mixed up adults in the future. There already is, isn't there? There already is, but I think there's going to be a lot more, especially if he is doing this sort of stuff. And there's 285,000 followers on Russell T Davis's Instagram. I don't believe this is responsible behavior from somebody that is running a BBC television primetime family drama in which he's shoehorning in his politics in all the time now in an effort to preach to the public.
I think it's an interesting thing here because, as you touched on, Ian, about Guy Lineker being sort of non-stick, I think the issue with RTD is that he's working for the BBC via Bad Wolf, but he's kind of once or twice removed. So whether or not he'll be, I don't think he's going to be fired because I think he's going to get away with it, sadly. But he needs to be reprimanded to behave properly and appropriately on these social medias because it's not his place to do this, not in terms of his position at the BBC or Bad Wolf.
He's a writer. Russell T Davies, you are allegedly a writer. Write and write good stuff. If you want to go into politics, bugger off into politics and leave the rest of us alone because you're destroying Doctor Who because you're politics. Now, I do think you're right here. I do think he will be protected because everybody around him is so busy kissing his arse that I don't think they would actually approach this subject with him because they'll believe him. And if they don't believe him, they still have to act as though they believe him. But there is a cult there. I've mentioned it so before. There is a cult. They are part of this big cult. And it's quite
allegedly, I can hear Ecclestone's voice.
Allegedly, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. But also, you know, the fact is, none of them went to do the research. They're just so jumping on, as I say, they jump onto the latest bandwagon, the latest in an attempt to get at the government and to an attempt. This is all down to their dictate that a TW is a woman and a TM is a man. They're not. They're not. It's as simple as that. As a homosexual gay man, I can tell you from first hand that a TM is not a man because he has a vagina, therefore a woman. You know, so actually their rhetoric is also, as I've said before, homophobic. And I don't understand why a lot of them are supporting that because they turn a convenient blind eye. But we must also look at the fact, gentlemen, and everybody in the chat, this is another rant or another version of a rant from him because there were two others a couple of years ago along the same lines at award ceremonies where he's surrounded by his own. And strangely, one of the award ceremonies, I believe, was the Attitude Award ceremony where he got a standing ovation from all these people as part of this massive cult, you know, whooping and cheering at him, of course, for being one of their beloved leaders. But this has gone too far, I think. And I think he should be reprimanded. I think he should be looked at. And I think he should be investigated. And I think he should be suspended because anybody else in a normal workplace who puts something like that out would be. And I don't see why these show business people are protected like this because they're not contributing anything apart from the bile, the hatred and the nastiness that they accuse everybody else of doing. It's right there in front of them.
Now, I'm not completely aware of the BBC's policy and contracts and stuff in terms of if you have to sign a non-biased approach to your broadcasting, like Guy Lineker, etc. But if they do, they should adhere to that if they're meant to, rather than just, you know, blowing hot air.
Yeah, Raymond was saying there, Davis will be employed by Bad Wolf Studios and not classified as a BBC employee. Now, that is obviously being discussed an awful lot there. And I think this is one of the problems they've got with the football fella. But also, Russell T Davies is the face of Doctor Who. Doctor Who is owned by the BBC. It's in co-production with Bad Wolf and BBC Studio, but it's always going to be mainly a BBC property. At some point, because Russell will be the face of that to the public, they have to come in and step in and say, are you doing something about this? Surely, because it's bringing their show into disrepute. So I don't care if you're independent, if you're still with an independent person, and you're working on behalf of the BBC, I would class you as BBC staff. You should, in my opinion, be following the guidelines and being proud.
Bad Wolf are effectively contractors of the BBC. They're contracted to produce a programme under license. And therefore, when you are a contractor, you have an obligation to at least adhere to allegedly the the rules that the person that is contracting you or the organization that is contracting you has in itself. And if you're not, then you could be seen as bringing that organization into disrepute or contempt. And so there is an obligation there to an extent. It's just what is the will within the BBC to try and uphold that. And as the BBC is overwhelming that way anyway, I think it's interesting though that they are exceptionally, they love throwing around far right, just to shut anybody up.
Totally.
They are very much far left. They are absolutely far left. But the interesting thing is, as I understand it, a very, very, very left-wing actor, allegedly, is Christopher Eccleston. So when you have somebody that is very left-wing and he's calling publicly for the sackings of people that are extremely left-wing, that's interesting because ultimately they always eat their own, and I think that's a prime example.
Oh, it is actually, and they always start within, don't they? But the hypocrisy that's come through from all the tweets that were going out yesterday and all the social media postings yesterday and today, now the showbiz lovies coming in on top of this as well. All of them have the thing in common, as we're saying, that not one of them has done the research. They've just gone onto the bandwagon. They've seen these people like the Attitude magazine coming out with that statement and go, "Oh, that's awful." Now, had it been said that way, had that actually happened, I think we'd all be a little bit appalled here and being saying, "Hang on a minute, what's going on there?" But I'm going to show it again. It wasn't. There was nothing there. If you can show me anybody that believes that he was phobic, where in that statement that there was he? I can't believe actually these days I'm actually defending a Tory Prime Minister. How the worm has changed. But there it is. Where is it saying it's phobic there? And it all boils down, as I say, to the fact that they are determined to dictate to us that a TW is a woman and a TM is a man. And we have to say that. Now, I have to also point out the fact that Keir Starmer was actually in the wrong. As Ian, you pointed out last night when we were talking about this, didn't you? Because he mentioned that certain person was in the gallery when that certain person wasn't. And then Ian found this. Reference to visitors from the UK Parliament. No reference should be made to visitors, whether in the public gallery or in any other part of the chamber, except for the purpose of a motion of their withdrawal. So why isn't that being questioned, everybody? Why is it all one-sided? Why is it always one-sided? These people are so intent on bringing down the Conservative government and the people in there. They're now actually what I would call scraping the barrel in desperation to do that.
Absolutely. I think, like I've already said, I am not going to vote for either of those two parties at the next election. So neither of them has my support and neither of them has my protection. But I am very, 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 very keen on fairness and balance across a lot of aspects of life.
Absolutely, you have to be.
Yeah, and I notice a lot of things, such as, if Boris Johnson, for example, when he was there, not a fan either, but if Boris Johnson was there and he was perceived to have broken Parliament's rules, which he was, then he was hounded out and it was merciless. Starmer there, in black and white, has broken parliamentary rules. Nothing. Now, Boris had to stand down because he allegedly had a slice of cake. Now, whatever story you believe on that, and anybody in America, seriously, that is true. Some people in Downing Street had a party for him, even though he wasn't aware of it, apparently, and they handed him a piece of cake, and that was it. He ultimately lost his job.
I'm not buying that nonsense. That was all bollocks.
No, I think there was lots of different stories. He said one thing, he said another. He was photographed outside of a window, sat having drinks, wasn't he, as well? So he did not help himself in the slightest. However, in balance, during the same lockdown with the same rules, Starmer was videoed in a room of a lot of people having a curry in the northeast one night, totally against rules. But apparently that was working because the hotel he was staying in wasn't serving food. The hotel then said they were still open and they were still serving food. Nothing. And it happened because the local police commissioner happened also to be a Labour Party activist. You might wonder why. It just never seems equitable or honest. And it just makes you question what goes on. It really does. But I must stress, not defending Boris in any way. He was such a bumbling idiot. He did not help himself in any way.
It's a different show entirely, but she never got into politics. How he got elected is madness, but that's another show.
Well, the problem is, I've said this before on Whose Views and on this particular show Headlines as well. We don't want to talk about this stuff, but we have people bringing it into the world of Doctor Who. I think we all want to just talk about Doctor Who, and the show Doctor Who and appreciate it, but we can't these days because the politics are forced into Doctor Who. We saw it over the recent 4 episodes. We saw the politics creeping in, and it's very difficult now because we know where this lot stand. And when we were kids, we didn't know the politics. We could guess the politics, but we didn't know the politics of the people that were involved with the show. In those days, everybody was respectful of the fact that democracy meant the freedom of choice, and nobody got at each other, and nobody attacked each other, and nobody called people names. We now have that inbred into a generation. And when you've got 60-year-old people running Doctor Who doing that, and absolutely publishing through social media, the evil, if you like, of social media, and they're publishing these sort of words, I find this absolutely shocking. What I also find shocking, as I'm saying here, is the effect it can have on Doctor Who fandom, because we know a lot of them will be diametrically opposed to what we are saying here now, and we will probably get some comments about it. And what I would like to say to those people who are leaving comments, you are very welcome to join the live stream shows. You are very welcome, if you want to even come on the show and talk to us about why you think we're wrong. The email is whosviews1@gmail.com. The reason this channel is called Whose Views is because it's views. But when you've got something like this, if you're going to challenge us as to why we're talking about this now, I want to know why you think that statement from the Prime Minister was phobic, because I can't see anything in it to suggest it was. So again, if you want to come on the show, don't just leave a comment and slink off. Come and talk to us live on the show. whosviews1@gmail.com. Your opinion is what we want to hear. The other thing I'm worried about here is we've had a show recently where we talked about the effect on fandom, and we've had this before from a particular person where I've showed the tweet, the X that got him banned. Do you remember? Remember the one I'm talking about, where he actually said that this is not a Tory welcome space or something like that, and he called them the M word as well. And I think now open season now, because so has Russell T Davies, as we've just shown. But there have been others as well, hasn't it? And as it was pointed out in the chat, let me just find that comment. It was Bobby D75. You have the redacted star saying out of control comments as well. Now, I had to go and look what redacted was. And then it reminded me, it was that thing that only a certain amount of people who want to are being nice, they would have gone to see this Doctor Who redacted. They would have taken part in it. Any sane person wouldn't have done, and we don't care about it. There we go, editorial comment. So this person was actually on ITN News. ITN News, you didn't challenge this at all. This is the comment here. This is from ITN News. The question apparently was, do you think Rishi Sunak should apologise? And that was the answer from this actor. And his name is Charlie Craggs, who is a tea activist, allegedly. Now, this is somebody that works on a BBC Doctor Who product called Redacted. This is shocking. This is something else. This is who we're dealing with in our fandom today. This is why I'm saying now our fandom has been infected and poisoned. And then, of course, a certain person on X, who we will never mention, if you're ever wondering whether Charlie Craggs will ever reprise her Doctor Who Redacted role on screen, saying the PM should do this in an ITV interview may scupper that, but it's definitely worth respecting. You piece of filth. You piece of filth. They're all doing what they accuse all of us of doing.
Yeah. They accuse people such as us as spouting hate. And there they are spouting hate. They are the absolute epitome of hypocrisy.
Yeah. Well, it's all hypocritical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't seem to understand that. They really, really, really don't understand that.
And there was no challenge to that question after she said that. The journalist didn't reply to that in any way?
Apparently not. I didn't get time to go and see this because this was brought to my attention just a few moments before the show, really. So I had to do all the stuff for it. But apparently not. So if anybody there knows whether or not that person, what was his name?
Charlie.
Charlie, right? Okay.
Charlie Craig. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Allegedly is an actor and also a trans activist, but allegedly, I don't know. If any of you saw them on that ITN news, were they challenged by the reporter from ITN? And if so, what was the answer? Because that would mean we can do a balance there. If they were challenged and there was another, but if I can't see them having an apology, and I just cannot believe that this is endorsed at all. Honest to God, I'm really frustrated with Fandom at the moment because of this coming through from the very top, the people or the person that's producing our show.
Shocking. It really is.
Garbage is here saying, I stopped watching ITV News. It goes on for an hour. It's like a documentary. That's because they're bigging themselves up, isn't it? They love themselves over there. And because there's now more news outlets as well, Garbage, which you can get on other social media platforms, and we all know the ones I'm talking about, they're taking shares of the BBC and the ITV and the Sky audience, and they don't like it. That's why they'll try and bring them down. They don't like their numbers going down. Alien Airplanes is saying she should not have said that. Simple as. Even just having that opinion and spouting it aloud is horrible. Okay, so I take it that Charlie is a TW. Am I right there? I don't know, because I don't know who they are. Tardy Spider, hello all. Been watching for a while. Please remember, all of us are usually what we scream the loudest that we are not. All right, very thoughtful. What have we got here? Peter was saying, Redacted was awful. I had to listen to Judge.
I give it 5 minutes and turned off.
I wouldn't even bother with it because I can just tell for now it would annoy me because I know it's all part of the TQI cult agenda.
Well, didn't they announce it as being the gayest Doctor Who ever, which in a sense they had no intention of making it gay. They had an intention of making it trans.
I take that as an insult.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah,
no, I didn't give it the time of day at all.
No.
I really didn't. I think what is interesting though is if you look in the 1970s, which was a huge period of industrial and political turmoil in Britain, strikes, multiple governments, you know, we think, oh, we've had 17 prime ministers in the last 2 weeks. Well, we had multiple governments in the space of a year. In the 1970s, we had strike upon strike. We had coal strikes, power strikes, so we had power cuts and things like that. But in amongst all of that, Doctor Who was able to do a story like The Green Death, which at the time was, oh, that's almost political because there was minor strikes going on at the time. But we also had writers and who were hard left. They were communists. We had a producer who was a Buddhist. I think we had Terence Dix, who was fairly middle of the road. We had Robert Holmes, who was just like anything for a laugh, you know. And Malcolm Hulke, of course, was I believe he was a communist, diehard. And you know what? They all worked together, and they all made bloody fantastic Doctor Who stuff that stands up today, you know. And you go 50 years on from now, and Russell T Davies's stuff, it'll be gone. Like we've said before, even 2005 has dated badly.
Oh,
this
terribly. Yeah.
Will be gone. It won't be seen with a straight face at all.
What concerns me about this is the legacy, if you like, that they're actually leaving. Because if you look at those episodes we've just had from the Star Beast onwards, that has actually harmed Doctor Who, hasn't it? Because not only are people turning around and laughing at this and switching it off, and seeing very clearly through the dictates of you will use personal pronouns, you will say a TW is a woman, etc., etc., etc. It has become that sort of thing where we are, again, as Doctor Who fans. I mean, I don't tell people I like Doctor Who anymore, to be quite honest, because it's embarrassing. It's just purely embarrassing because you're then judged from the political angle of it as well. Oh, you must like all this sort of stuff. Well, no, as you can tell from this show, we will call it all out because we just want good old-fashioned writing. And Pete was saying here, was it the same when I was a kid, or was it I just didn't notice? It certainly wasn't the same back then. For one thing, we didn't have all this gender war because we knew a man was a man and a woman was a woman. And I blame gender studies for all this nonsense that's come about now because they had to fill a bloody course, didn't they? You know, and they, and earn their money. So they basically exploded into all this absolute nonsense about this, and people have gone on the courses and they've been brainwashed. It's as simple as that. And then it's crept into something like my community, you know, where somebody somewhere just said, okay, so all this isn't heterosexual. I know, we'll just bung it together with the LGB. That's a bloody insult as well. I just don't like that at all, because sex issues or same-sex issues are nothing to do with gender issues. It's as simple as that. We're two totally different things. You'll never find a lesbian or a gay man that is unhappy necessarily. Well, you won't find many of them that are unhappy with their bodies, because we know what we are. We're same-sex attracted. I'm probably not making any sense, but I am really, really.
You are.
I just can't believe. Where do we draw the line with these people? Where do we draw the line? Now, I have heard today that some fans have started the call for RTD to be fired from Doctor Who. Is that something you in the chat would support? Are you expecting that to happen now? Is this a movement that's going to take off? What do you guys think about this? Are they right to call for him to go?
I think he needs to be reprimanded because he needs to be aware of what he's doing. And that needs to give him an awareness and not this arrogance of, I am in control, I can do what I like. So he needs someone to tell him not to do these things. Give him a second chance on that. But if he keeps doing it, he needs to go.
Well, considering that he does keep doing it, Paul, I've said now the two award shows where he thinks that everybody's like-minded with him, which they probably are. He's done it there. He's done it before on his social media, but this one is really strong.
Mm.
I think he knows precisely what he's doing, and I don't think he gives a crap. And I think, you know, like Gatwa was censured for swearing or whatever in public, and he mentioned being told off in an interview, and he was making light of it. He was making a joke of it. It was funny to him.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Ultimately, he knows he's one of them, and they're not going to touch him because they daren't. And because of the collective outrage, it's obviously a very minute fraction of society, but they shout very loud. So, you know, they're petrified of them. So they wouldn't censure him. They wouldn't dare. But he knows that. Russell T Davies knows that. He knows that he can say what he likes, and he knows precisely what he's doing. I just don't think he gives a crap. I really don't. I think
it's obvious that he doesn't. And he obviously doesn't give a crap. But do you really? It's looking like he is protected, isn't it? Really, from whatever's around there, because he must have. We heard rumours that on his two rants at the two separate award ceremonies, which you can all see on the various social media platforms, they're still there. You can go and see him mouthing off, basically, and in my opinion, making a fool of himself with all this nonsense. He's standing for what he believes in. Absolutely fine, no worries from that. But it's coming into Doctor Who, and it shouldn't, because we don't all agree with it, and we're not all on board with it. But also, it's as though he knows, because nobody. The rumor was he had been warned or told or said you can't say these sorts of things because you're representing. He's obviously not caring, is he? No. So where do we draw the line? What's going to make him say? Would you just be a responsible 60-year-old man and write a bloody good show rather than pushing off with all this nonsense because that's your personal life? Where do we draw the line, everybody?
Well, I think I think he's going to get away with it. As I said earlier, I think he's protected, like we've said, and I doubt within now the next 2 years he'll still be there.
Oh, right. Doug is saying to his guys, it seems like RTD says Doug has become too powerful and it's gone to his head. I agree with that. I think it really has. And I don't know what they're going to do. Alien Airplanes. Although I do like RTD as a writer, I think he maybe should be fired, given someone else a chance as showrunner. But bearing in mind, he's got 2 series in the can and a 3rd one in development. I don't understand why these people think he knows what Doctor Who is either. He had a success with it once. Then he went away and he's come back and he's shown he doesn't understand Doctor Who anymore, because to him, it appears it's all about the message, as the wonderful critical drinker would say. It's all about that. And we've seen that. And I think he's lost the ability to write a good story, to be quite honest. Let's have a look. Cybermatch Strikes. If we think Julie and Jane will tell him to rein it in, no way. I totally agree, because they are on board with all this. Some of the tweets that Jane was putting out last year suggest that they are, because, of course, they judge us all. We are all, of course, right wing, or even far right.
All right.
And as I've said before, I've seen this all the time. Anybody that uses the term far right, to me, is pure ignorant, because you've got no idea. None of us have any idea what that actually is like, except for those people that were there in WW2. And let's face it, it was a certain section, certain communities in WW2 that were persecuted by them. I tell you what, if they ever did appear again, I think a lot of people would have a very rude awakening. I really, really do. I think it's totally ignorant, because none of us can know what that is like, ever. But I actually look at the far left, everybody, at the same thing, because they're the ones that are cancelling people and burning the books and getting at women and getting at certain communities. We're seeing that in the world. Hypocrites in my eyes, a lot of them. Gary is saying to us, they're all a bunch of self-centered, undisciplined, egotistic, spoiled rats, whatever their age. It is coming through, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tardy Spider is saying RTD is making those of us over 60 years old look bad. Please stop. And Raymond's putting in here, sadly, the BBC could fire RTD tomorrow, but they would hire someone else with the same worldview. We are not getting a Toby Whithouse type character. That's a very good point. Because who in the BBC would dare to go against this rhetoric? Because it has infected show business, hasn't it, lads?
It certainly has. I mean, I am still hoping for the ship to turn around and people to come back to their senses, but I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's going to do that either.
I really do think it's too late. You turn the ship around eventually. The problem is you've still got all that hate-filled, horrible, crappy few years. You can't get away from it. You know, it's there. It's not retconnable anymore. It's been set in stone. And you can't, and all the hatred that it's brought in fandom and everything else.
Well, that's the thing.
Can't unwrite that, you know.
Well,
and fandom was bitchy in the 80s, wasn't it? You know, it was bitchy in the 80s. It was just slower because, you know, somebody would say something nasty, and a month later in the next issue of the fanzine, the reply letter would have come in. Whereas now it's like this, but it was bitchy then, but it was never anything hate-filled like this.
It wasn't pulling the guts out of each other because of an opinion, and it wasn't dictatorial in any way, because we didn't have that issue then. That's a brand new issue. You know, we would argue about certain things, and yes, there would be clashes of personalities where you're talking about the bitchiness, I assume, Ian, but there was never anything, and politics very rarely came into Doctor Who fandom. We were never this bad, and we certainly didn't have a set of a number of people with obvious brainwashed viewpoints, and certainly an awful lot of them following a leader because they think, well, that person's okay, and that's my role model. And I'm talking here about actors as well as the production staff, actors that will wear various T-shirts and stuff like this with political statements. So, of course, you know, the youngsters are looking at that going, right, if they think of that, I will follow it. I will follow them. I mean, remember in our day, of course, you have footballers who are very precise, for example. You know, they were very role modelish. They would be seen in suits out of the game. You know, they were very polite. They were courteous because they knew that young men especially would be watching them and copying them. That's the role. Tom himself, we've always mentioned Tom Baker was a great role model for our generation, superb role model. And we didn't know his politics. As adults now, we can guess it, but we didn't know it. We didn't know anybody's. Now, everybody's there. Everybody's on it going, look at me, I'm virtuous, I'm a nice person, I'm supporting this, and I'm flying this flag. Makes me puke, quite frankly. It really does. Who cares? You're an entertainer or a writer. Get on with it. And stop trying to score points politically. If you want to get into politics, get into politics. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your comments. As usual, you are fantastic with all your comments and what you're saying here. So let's go through some of these guys. So Deco24, I don't like the idea of firing him. To me, it smacks a bit of just being another form of cancel culture. But again, I get that, but where do you draw the line? Because he's not going to listen to any warning. And you can't fine him because he's minted. So he won't care.
Who don't agree with him have already been cancelled.
Yeah. Yep. And they're calling for people to be fired all the time as well. So I understand what you're saying, but surely if you've got proof of something like this wrong, surely that's not cancel culture. Surely that's breaking the rules, and surely that's wrong. And actually to call for the M word of people, I personally find abhorrent. I think that's borderline criminal. especially where people can see it. And it's always worrying because you don't know who's read it and who could possibly in this day and age actually go and do it.
Yeah.
There's an element of responsibility there. Do you not think so, Deco? Kirsty is saying it would be a media dumpster fire if they fired him. It would. They would love it and lap it up. Imagine also, Kirst, what would happen to Fandom. Can you imagine the meltdown from some of these alleged fans?
The victim card, wouldn't it? The victim card.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
It would be. Doctor Who 1963 is with us. RTD gets fired and a new, even more woke writer replaces him. And I don't even like using the word woke because it's more complex than that. Absolutely. This is nothing to do with wokeness at all, is it, Doctor Who 1963? This is pure, basically, right or wrong. And also, as I've pointed out several times in the show, just jumping on a bandwagon, not doing the research, not actually going looking at what this, and not thinking with a clear head, because they don't. They just hear somebody cry, phobia, whoosh. They're all on it then. They're all on it. I find that really pathetic. I really, really do. Dave Mullen is saying, if he has brought in a like-minded clique to surround him, then who is there who will dare to take him on and tell him to stop? Does Tranter dare? Hypocrisy? Is he too big now? Yes.
But he shouldn't be. That's the point.
He's a bloody writer.
Bad Wolf himself. Is he a shareholder? Is he a shareholder in Bandwagon?
No idea, Ian. I have no idea.
I thought they'd gone off him, Tranter and Hegarty and Gardner and formed Bad Wolf, but it might have been the three women that formed it. I think
it was the women. I think it was the ladies that went away and formed Bad Wolf. It wouldn't surprise me if he was a shareholder because they're friends. And if you've set up a business and you've got really dear friends who can do that, then you do ask them to. So it wouldn't surprise me, but we don't know, and we make that very, very clear now. We don't know whether he's a shareholder in that. Others may know. We certainly don't. Thank you very much, Doctor Who 63. Nice to see you. Atom is here. Hello, Atom. He's got a copy there. The far left are absolutely disgusting people. They're hypocrites and judgy, preachy, and unforgiving lot. They are the modern successors to the... Ooh, okay, yeah, let's be one. Frank. Hello, Frank. Is that Cranug? Nice to see you. You're new to us, or new to me, so nice to see you here. Looks like the series is going to be made until at least 2026, so I don't see anything changing until then, at least. I think we'll all agree with you there, Frank. Yeah, because, of course, they've got two series more or less in the can now, and we are dealing with the showbiz lot, aren't we? What we're looking at here, though, with this particular question is after that Instagram that was put out by him and the successive ones to the likes of Carol Vorderman, should action be taken? Are the fans that are calling for RTD to be removed from Doctor Who today, and I do think it's a small number, but the calls are there from certain quarters, are they right to do so? I can actually understand where they're coming from. I really, really can. Because that is abhorrent, isn't it? Cybermatch Strikes is also saying, as much as I want Doctor Who on screen, I think the viewing figures suggest the broader public are not swallowing it totally. Absolutely. And we talk about that on our review shows, don't we? And TARDIS Spider, maybe Mary Whitehouse can regenerate. She would have a field day today, wouldn't she?
Oh, God, yes.
Can you imagine? You know, because this sort of stuff would not be allowed with her, and somebody like her would hold the BBC right to the account, because she had the phone numbers of all the bigwigs on the 6th floor, didn't she? She went direct to the top, whereas the rest of us have to go through bloody Barry Took on points of view. I
never thought we'd be defending Mary Whitehouse in any way, shape, or form on this. Yeah.
Well, we do have, of course, in Britain, we've talked about them before on headlines. We do have this new Common Sense organisation that we've spoke about on the show before. Yeah. I wonder what they're making of all this. I wonder if they're actually aware of it. But because it's come into the Doctor Who fan because of what he's done here, we have to talk about it because Fandom is also responding to it. A certain element of Fandom is responding to this by jumping on the bandwagon as well. Oh my God, that was awful. Oh, this must happen to them. They are horrible people. This must happen. Oh, Russell, as we've seen from that certain person who we won't mention at all. Gosh, yeah. It's worrying where we are at the moment, though, isn't it? I just don't understand what's going on right now. Whether we like it or not, the politics are in Doctor Who.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it develops over the next few weeks and months, if at all.
It's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, because I'm sure the BBC are receiving complaints. about this. I'm sure they are. They must be. It's very, it's there. If people see this and they're complaining, the BBC do have to look at the complaints. We've talked about that on the show before as well. Having a new showrunner, says Atom, won't change anything. It will take a tip-down corporate change to fix Doctor Who. I, for one, would love to see an independent British studio take it over and put streaming. They're called Bad Wolf, mate. It's already happened. Bad Wolf is independent. It's not the BBC. It's BBC Studios, who are also independent from the BBC. So there's BBC Studios and Bad Wolf with Disney Plus. They are there
and
already.
Sony as well. So
well, they're somewhere in the mix, aren't they?
Yeah.
And Digby is telling us that Doctor Who will remain as a cultural character, a series of brilliant stories, but this revived version from 2005 is dead. Raymond, a rest would be preferable until the tide turns, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Again, Raymond, totally agree with you. I would have liked to have seen this ending in 2017 because it's just got mortifyingly embarrassing, the whole thing. What do you guys think about that?
I think so too. It should have stopped then, or it should have stopped certainly the end of bloody Jodie Whittaker.
Well, yeah, and the only reason they kept it going, of course, is because Russell comes along going, oh, look, we're interested. David Taylor and Catherine Tate and myself are interested in this. And the BBC go, ooh, big hit. How wrong they were, because it wasn't. The Be Kind Brigade are anything but, says Digby. I totally agree with you with that, because I've been on the receiving end of them many, many times, and you would not believe the homophobia I get from them. It's just outrageous.
They're all little Charlie Chaplins, allegedly. So.
Oh, RTD would be no good as a political leader, says Cybermat Strikes. Reality doesn't have a bullshit reset button like his Doctor Who episodes.
And into politics. If he went into politics, day one, he'd be like, trans, TQIA. And then somebody would say, right, okay, what do you think on the economy? What do you think on this? What do you think on defense? What do you think on education and everything else? And he would not be able to say anything without a TQIA slant on it. He's very much a one topic person, I think. I don't think he's got the range to be able to engage on any serious level outside of what his particular area is. I think he's, ultimately he's probably not that bright, really. Personal opinion.
Well, something's definitely happened with him in the interim period. I think it didn't help. No disrespect, but I don't think his time in America it helped him at all, because that's where, as I've been saying to people, this whole TQI movement has come from there. And whatever happens in America eventually gets to us, unfortunately. And we seem to have lost an awful lot of our British way of life and identity, in my opinion, when it comes to being able to look at common sense and facts and being able to say that's actual nonsense.
I listened to a podcast with Toby Haydock interviewing Russell for the 50th, getting little anecdotes from every story he's trying to collect. He was doing that then for the 50th. And Russell's on it for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I listened to it in chunks, and he's a very different person then. He's very different to the way he is now. So
he's a very angry man. I've said this, Paul, for the last couple of years. He is now a very angry 60-year-old man with an agenda. And that's come through. And as I've said before many times on this channel, I wish he'd just bugger off now and go back to Channel 4 and write that trans drama that he's going to be brilliant at. If that's how he wants to change the world, go and do that. Go and do it there where it belongs. Don't push it into a science fiction show, because we don't want it, basically. And you're speaking to a very small amount of people that will kiss your arse, because some of us will turn around and question you all the way. The big question about this as well that I was going to say as well is, I'm like you, Ian. I'm now politically homeless. I'm not going to. I really can't see myself voting for anything about this. The big question I do ask people now when they come from any political party to talk to me is, "What is a woman?" And I judge them from that straight away. But I think this latest thing. This was obviously the leader of the opposition deliberately waiting his chance and weaponized an incredibly awful. Words fail me on that situation. What happened to that young person? Outrageous, disgusting. All the horrible things there. Doesn't matter who that person was. It was awful, and you cannot imagine as a human being the circumstance that. Oh no, we'll move on to that bit. But he used that to attack the Conservative Party. Now that he's not going to get my vote now either. You know, this is shocking, this, isn't it? It really is outrageous. And it all comes down to an ideological basis, which hasn't even stemmed from Britain. It's a sad state of affairs we're in now, isn't it, everybody?
Yeah, it certainly is.
It really, really is. Oh, my goodness. Happy Werewolf. Hello to you. Love that little avatar, do we call it there? I love that as well. I love that. The BBC own the marketing rights, but Disney owns Bad Wolf and Doctor Who. How's everyone this evening? Well, we're frustrated, actually. But you know what? Coming on here and talking to you in the chat as well, I think it's very therapeutic, and we do appreciate that. We're all fans here as well, of course. And as I've said many times, I'm going to say it again, we don't want to talk about all this ideological nonsense that they feed in, but it's in the show. It's been put into Doctor Who. The politics have been put into the show. It's biased and it's unbalanced. So we have to, because if we don't challenge it, who else is? But thank you very much. It's nice to see you. Disney owns Bad Wolf. Do they? I thought they were just in partnership. I think wasn't Sony buy something in?
Sony's got shares in it. I think Disney are just supporting it. I think, aren't they? They got the streaming rights. I think.
I thought they got the streaming rights out of the UK. I don't think they own. I don't think they own Bad Wolf. Yeah. I know Sony put some money into Bad Wolf, didn't they? Because they have been successful up until this point. Let's see what happens with them. So it's lovely to see you, Happy Werewolf. If you are new to our channel, please subscribe. It'd be great to see you there. Yeah. And Garbage was saying, I suppose we are all nasty haters now for calling out RTD for his comments. I'm used to it, so I'm sorry if that's not going to be. Yeah, we will be. Yes, and of course now we will be branded right wing or extreme right wing. I personally don't care because I am British and I can see common sense and I can see crap from a mile away. I can absolutely tell you. And Digby, thank you again for all your comments. I honestly think that RTD is now a bit cracked and we won't be seeing much more of this reboot. The BBC are going to have to do something. I'm sure they are. They have to, because he's on and on and on and on and on all the time, isn't he? And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to show what he said, and you can make your own minds up. That's what Russell responded to. That's the Instagram post, whatever you call it. That's what's there. That's what Vorder said. His reply. The conversation continued. I'm going to leave that with you. You are all adults. You can make your own mind up. Oh, this has been a fantastic way to actually get this off the chest and to discuss this. So thank you so much for everybody that has joined us tonight. Thank you for everybody in the chat for your comments. And thank you for supporting Whose Views and indeed Headlines. Thanks again to, as ever, to Paul and Third Doctor Ian for joining me on the show. Just to let you know that thankfully, and thank God, we are going to be returning to Doctor Who on this channel. Because tomorrow, please join us here on Whose Views as we start our We Love Davros season. We Love Davros season. We are kicking off with a review of where it all started for that evil genius, one of the best science fiction characters ever. Take note, a certain showrunner. Ever. We're starting off with our review of Genesis of the Daleks. That is going to cheer us all up because it's bloody proper Doctor Who. So come and join us tomorrow with your views on those famous 6 episodes. Tell us what you think of Davros. That's the beginning of our Davros season. The shows are now all up for you on the channel, so you can see when and where we're going to be doing this as we celebrate Davros. And let's just hope that we can all have a breather from all the nonsense of the normal world that's going on now. Don't forget, this is Whose Views, and when they drop a headline, we'll be here to talk about it. Thank you all so much for helping us tonight. That's been great therapy. I really appreciate it. And we will see you, hopefully, for Genesis of the Daleks. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you later. Say goodnight, gentlemen.
Good night. Bye.